A new film is highlighting the chaotic and flawed response at the Uvalde school in Texas. Texas's deadliest school shooting. The film highlighting law enforcement's reaction to that 2022 school shooting that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. Well, now I want to bring in Stephanie Sherman. She's an attorney representing the families of children, some of the children who survived that incident, to talk more about the reaction to this, but really what we're learning from all of it. Stephanie, thanks so much for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you as well. Well, first off, what are we learning exactly from this new film? What does it highlight as it takes us through really that deep look at how police in Uvalde responded on that fateful day?
Well, what I learned from this film, because it is an inside look into what happened from actual body cams of the police responding. And the first thing that I noticed is that the children actually performed better in their training for an active shooter by being quiet, by remaining in their classrooms, by saying nothing, than the police performed in engaging in their active shooter training. So that was one thing that really stood out to me, because there was no screaming, there was no yelling. Everyone was quiet in that hallway.
I remember in my coverage of this, watching this all unfold, some of the images obviously there on the screen, such a tragedy there. But then we find out later, we see that response from officials with the school district, with the school police department going in and waiting, and the minutes just seem to continue flashing by. What are authorities learning in the wake of this in terms of law enforcement across the country? How can they respond better in the future if, and unfortunately, when this happens again in America?
So since Columbine, and that was in 1999, we've learned a lot, and training has changed for police officers, and it's called active shooter training. And these officers were required by Texas law to have active shooter training. And the thing that the officers knew that they have to do when they go into a situation like this, they must neutralize, distract, kill, whatever they have to do, the shooter, regardless of anything else that's going on. They have to go in. There's a priority of life, and the priority of life, the people at the top of that are the children and the teachers. And what we see from this film, from the documentary, is that the police entered the building. They tried initially to go to the door, were shot at, retreated, and never went back. And so what's critical in these situations is their response in the first few minutes. And you have an attempt to go in and then a retreat, and they never make another attempt again for another 70 minutes. And that is absolutely against the active shooter training. They have to keep going in. They have to keep trying. So first, they failed in that regard. And then the second thing that is evident from this documentary is that there was no incident commander. There was no one calling the shots. And that is also part of active shooter training, is you have to have someone calling the shots and directing everybody. And that didn't happen.
Yeah, and as someone who has really grew up my entire life going through active shooter training in public school in Cincinnati. Run, hide, fight, that's something that we're taught. But in the hopes that law enforcement will arrive within minutes, that's kind of contingent. Those elements are all contingent on the law enforcement responses, which is something that we unfortunately saw unfold in the most horrific way in Uvalde, which was, if police don't respond, the training that these kids are getting in American schools, it simply doesn't work.
That's right. That's right. Because in the documentary, the police were actually saying, we didn't hear any children. We didn't know there were any in there. And they spent a lot of time fumbling around trying to get into a classroom where the shooter isn't even located. So they completely messed this up. And what's evident is that the lack of command was really a critical element here. And you have some of these students inside the classrooms passing along critical information to dispatch by calling 911, telling dispatch what room they're in, and still because the chief of the school district police didn't have his radios on. He didn't know that information. So that was another big issue in this, is the total lack of communication between law enforcement, dispatch, and the children.
Now, meanwhile, you were involved in the filing of the first public lawsuit against a number of officials responsible for this, representing a number of the families of survivors who survived that massacre in Uvalde in 2022. What's the status of that? Will they ever get justice? Will they ever get what they're seeking?
Well, the status is that it's at a standstill, because what happens in a lawsuit like this, it must be filed in federal court because we have claims against the government. We have claims against the police. We have claims against the school and the gun maker. And it must be filed in federal court. And the first thing the defendants will do is file a motion to dismiss, saying that you don't have enough evidence to prove your case. And the problem is that we don't have all the evidence, because DPS is holding on to the reports. DPS, through the Texas Rangers, are the people that investigate the crime scene. They've gone in, they've taken information, they've taken documents, they've taken things from the shooter's house, laptops, phones. We don't have all those reports. A year and a half has gone by, and we still don't have those reports. A Travis County judge recently ruled that they must release those reports, but then the Attorney General in the last few days filed an appeal. So that's why the lawsuits are delayed presently, is because we lack all the evidence.
So what happens next in all of this?
What happens next is hopefully that an appellate court will uphold the Travis County judge's order, but that's going to take time. That is a strategic move by the DPS to slow the clock down, to further slow the clock down in hopes of running out the clock, because we have time. We have to file our cases within a certain amount of time. And meanwhile, these families who are without resources, in some cases, time is passing by. You have children that are afraid to go to school, children that are afraid to leave the house. You have moms and dads that are having to take time off work, and in some cases quit their job to take care of their children that are suffering. And so that is all costing those families, not only emotionally, but financially. Meanwhile, DPS is running out the clock and just spinning their wheels and preventing access to this critical information that we all need to move forward.
Very tough situation for everyone involved. I can't imagine what those families continue to go through on a day in, day out basis in the wake of that tragic incident. Stephanie Sherman there, an attorney representing the families of children who survived Uvalde. We appreciate you joining the show. Anything we didn't ask, anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you so much for your time today and giving some time to this critical issue.
Of course, we'll certainly keep our eyes on it and keep us posted as well. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
Thank you.